more on this, I'm now joined by Richard Giragosian in Yerevan. He is the director of the Regional Studies Center, the RSC, which is an independent think tank based in Armenia. Richard, good to have you back here on the NewsHour. Let me begin by asking you whether it's the country's president meeting with the former chief of staff or the Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan announcing that he's willing to hold talks with the opposition. What do you think we're going to be seeing in the next coming days?
Well, I do see a progress. In other words, the Prime Minister has weathered the storm from the immediate urgent threat posed by the military's opposition. But we've returned to political paralysis. The president, in a largely symbolic role, is attempting to be kingmaker, to mediate and broker a consensus. But it is the Prime Minister who will, I think, accept the necessity to move to an early election, to break the stalemate, if you will.
Okay. When you and I were speaking on yesterday's show, you had mentioned that the most sensible way out of this political chaos was snap elections. You just mentioned that again. With all this backdoor diplomacy, what do you think the chances of that are right now?
Well, I think they're increasingly realistic, even within the government, within Pashinyan's ruling majority in parliament. There's growing calls for the need for a fresh mandate. At the same time, as we've seen, President Aliyev's concerned, but in many ways, no matter what happens, there is no danger, no challenge to the acceptance of the Russian-imposed ceasefire agreement. And it's also interesting that the Turkish position is very constructive in this crisis.
Okay. If you say that this scenario of early elections is becoming more and more realistic, let me put forth this hypothetical question to you. If there are elections in this country and some other party wins, what do you think their stance will be on the Karabakh deal?
Well, there's no choice. No matter who is in charge of the Armenian government, the war is over. Militarily, it was a loss. And going forward, there's no choice but to move forward under the terms of the ceasefire agreement. But I would argue, according to recent public opinion surveys, Pashinyan and his government are most likely to secure a reduced but still working majority. And the opposition remains largely discredited.
Okay. And we saw hints of that in yesterday's sort of the motion for impeachment sort of being rejected in Parliament. Okay, you and I were also talking about what the people really thought about this. I'm wondering if we're going to see a hatching within the silent majority. What do you think? Are they going to be taking their position one stance or another?
Well, worst case scenario, if the Prime Minister refuses to move to an early election, then it's most likely that he will begin to see an erosion of support. In many cases, the general population are eager for change and are no longer tolerant of this political deadlock.
Richard, always a pleasure having you on the NewsHour. Richard Giragosian, live for us from Yerevan. Thank you.